Recording in progress.
ಅದು ಮಾಮೂಲಿ Hello, good morning. Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Today we will discuss about the inflammations of the and other miscellaneous disease of the urethra. The most important thing is injury to the urethra. The second one is stricture of the urethra. And third one is the inflammations and infections of the urethra. If you remember the anatomy of the urethra, number of glands for lubrication purpose, for other purposes, they will drain into the urethra along the length of the urethra. And they make a harboring point for the bacteria. So if the urethra gets infected, infection goes into these tiny, small glands, they persist there. It's difficult to eradicate the infection. Then this inflammation subsequently results in stricture formation. The inflammation of the urethra is called as urethritis. And these inflammatory conditions of the urethra will include the meatal ulcer, a small ulcer at the meatus. If the scab forms on the ulcer, it will close the opening of the meatus, leading to temporary urinary obstruction. Then urethritis, inflammation along the urethra. This can be gonococcal urethritis, which is more dangerous and was more common previously. And nowadays, it is non-specific urethritis that is more common. As an effect of this inflammation and infection, by the some immunological basis, another disease known as Riter's disease is also seen. And as a complication of urethritis, you have got the periurethral abscess. These are the clinical conditions we are going to deal under the heading of inflammations of the urethra. The smallest, the common problem in children is meatal ulcer. In certain communities, the infants undergo circumcision as a ritual. So in such cases, in such children, the glans is exposed. So if the tip of the glans rubs against the clothes of the child, it may get ulcerated and resulting in meatal ulcer. Or it may continue, it may persist as a post-operative problem after circumcision. So during circumcision, we ligate the dorsal artery and veins of the penis as well as the frenulum artery. So if there is necrosis of small area of the glands or the skin at the posterior aspect where you have ligated the frenulum artery, the ulcer may persist. Lack of prepuce will lead to friction from clothing and ammoniacal dermatitis because of the leaking urine. Another mechanism, devascularization by ligation of the frenulum artery. The ulcer forms a scab that blocks the meatus. Child can pass in only by bursting the scab. Every time the child passes urine, there will be disturbance of the scab. Scab gets separated from the ulcer. It causes sort of pain. The boy screams and a little blood also oozes. Once the ulcer heals, it may lead to fibrosis and acquired pinhole meatus. The opening of the meatus gets narrowed. opening gets narrowed, leading to acquired pinhole meatus or meatus stenosis, which may need some dilatation or which may need minor surgery called meatoplasty. How to deal with this ulcer? So some local dressings or local cleanings to soften the scab and alkalinize the urine by giving some soda bicarb or citralga like that. And some people, some children may need meatotomy when there is a lot of fibrosis. This is a rare complication of the circumcision in infants. Once it develops, local treatment will be sufficient and the ulcer heals. Coming to urethritis, inflammation along the urethra. If the inflammation is more in the distal part of the urethra, this is called as anterior urethritis, which is more common. Anterior urethritis involving the penile part of the urethra. If the infection goes back and affects the bulbar urethra, membranous urethra, and posterior urethra, this is called as posterior urethritis. This particular posterior urethritis is more dangerous, more prone for complications like abscess formation, like fistulae, like stricture, etc. The person with urethritis will complain of scalding urination. This word scalding is used only for the urethral pain. Urethral pain. This is specific for this. Scalding pain means so there will be a lot of burning sensation while the urine is passed. Remember, if you have got an ulcer sometime, so what feeling you get if you touch the ulcer with your finger? If you rub the ulcer with your finger over it, so you get some lot of pain, the peculiar pain. So that is the meaning of the scalding. There is inflammation, tiny ulceration of the urethral mucosa, and when the urine comes and touches, flows on the surface of the ulceration, so you get typical pain, burning type of pain. It cannot be described correctly. It is called as scalding. So this scalding word is specific only for the urethral disease, scalding. So burning, you can say, one like a type of burning. Second is urethral discharge. Some old people, they come with a complaint of white discharge, and you may be astonished to hear the word of white discharge from a man. Till now, you think the white discharge occurs only in women. So in men also, the urethritis, chronic urethritis is there. There will be white discharge from the urethra, which stains the underclothes. So if a man says this complaint, this indicates urethral discharge. In acute cases, there may be purulent discharge. In chronic cases, scanty mucoid discharge will be there. So don't get perturbed when the man says white discharge. It is from the urethra. Next one is dysuria, discomfort while passing urine, a milder type of scalding. And pruritus, irritation. When the mucosa of the urethra is inflamed, mild degrees of inflammation may cause pruritus or irritation instead of pain. So these are the primary symptomatology when a person has got urethritis. So in all cases of urethritis, you must explore any history of exposure to the STD. And when you suspect urethritis, how to confirm your diagnosis? If there is discharge per urethra, you can take this discharge and do the gram staining in the OP itself. You can identify the organism and you can send the specimen for culture and sensitivity. If you go to the STD department or OP, VD clinic, routinely they will be collecting these specimens from the urethra. After massaging the urethra, they will get a drop of discharge and they will be seeing it under the microscope by simply gram staining and looking into the dissecting microscope so that you get some idea about the type of infection. If it is diplococci, two cocci are seen, it indicates gonococci and gonococcal infection. And if you see bacteria, it indicates non-specific inflammation. So primary idea of what type of inflammation is there, you can get by simply doing the gram stain in the OP itself. And dipstick testing of urine specimen can also be done for the presence of protein. Then culture of the specimen, either discharge consent or midstream urine. Midstream urine, clean catch urine or midstream urine is collected, it can be sent for culture and sensitivity. And nowadays, the non-specific urethritis is more common. It has surpassed the incidence of gonococcal infection. And the most common cause for this non-specific is chlamydia, which are difficult to identify by routine tests. Difficult to identify by routine tests of culture and sensitivity or microscopy. So in such cases, you can do the test known as nucleic acid amplification testing. This type of test will identify the genetic material belonging to the chlamydia and multiplies the nucleic acids present there. Even a single thing is there, it will take copies of it sufficient to be identified. And you can diagnose the condition. You can send urine or urethral swab for this nucleic acid amplification testing. If the patient is a woman, you can take swabs from the vagina, inside the cervix, endocervical, the anal canal, and also pharyngeal swabs. So multiple swabs are taken and sent for the laboratory for diagnosis. In all these cases nowadays, when you suspect exposure to the STDs, you must bear in mind the presence of HIV also. Routinely, you have to screen the patient for HIV infection. And you must take care of yourself. You must wear some gloves and don't touch the patient directly. Use an instrument to collect the specimens, everything, etc. You must be very careful nowadays. So up to this, general features of general symptomatology of the urethritis and the methods of diagnosis we have discussed. Now we will talk about the specific types of urethritis. The most common was gonorrheal urethritis. Though the incidence of gonorrhea has decreased nowadays with the advent of higher antibiotics. You must know how the gonorrhea causes the inflammation because it causes severe inflammation, it causes stricture of the urethra, it causes cervicitis and pelvic inflammatory disease in women. It can block the tubes, resulting in infertility. It can cause neonatal ophthalmitis, ophthalmia neonatorum in children, leading to blindness in children. So many dreadful complications are associated with the gonorrheal infection. That's why you must suspect and you must diagnose the gonorrhea in early stages and try to eradicate the infection. That's why even though it is less commonly seen nowadays, you must know about the gonorrheal infection. It is a sexually transmitted disease The organism is Neisseria gonorrhoeae, a gonococcus, a gram-negative kidney-shaped diplococcus. Gram-negative kidney-shaped diplococcus. Another important gonococcus is diplococcus is meningococcus, which is triangular in shape. Meningococcus will be triangular in shape, capsulated. Gonococcus will be kidney-shaped diplococcus. Two bacteria will be side by side as a bunch. This is gram-negative kidney-shaped diplococcus. Gram-negative means in the slide when you see, they appear pink. Gram-positive bacteria will appear blue. They retain the blue dye. Gram-negative bacteria, the blue dye is washed away when you clean it with mordant. The second dye, the pink dye, will be taken up by the bacteria. They appear reddish or pinkish under this microscope. This gonococci infects the anterior urethra in men, commonly affects the glands draining into the anterior or penile part of the urethra. In women, it can infect the urethra as well as the cervix. And in abnormal practices, it can infect the oropharynx, rectum, anal canal, etc. in both the sexes. And this is transmitted by unprotected contact. Clinical features. This gonococci is more often symptomatic in men. It goes unnoticed in women or with mild symptoms in women. You may patient or the doctor may confuse it as routine white discharge and give some antibiotics, it gets completely cured. So in men, it causes severe symptoms, becomes more symptomatic. The symptoms are urethral discomfort while passing urine, scalding micturition, urethral discharge, and often scalding dysuria. So the patient typically says, మండుతున్నది అంటాడు, ఒంటికి పోస్తే మండుతుంది అంటాడు. So that is the typical word he can use. So this is called as scalding. In women, more often it is asymptomatic. And in 50% or less, mild dysuria may be noted transiently, and there may be slight urethral discharge which go unnoticed. The woman does not compare of it, does not notice it, it go unheeded without noticing. In 10% of the woman, cervix gets infected leading to cervicitis. From the cervix, the infection spreads along the uterine canal and can reach the tubes. Fallopian tubes are also get infected, leading to salpingitis. So if it occurs on bilateral, both sides, both tubes are inflamed and infected, it will lead to fibrous tissue formation, and adhesions, number of adhesions will form, blocking the lumen of the tube, and the woman becomes infertile. Woman becomes infertile. So chronic bilateral PID due to gonorrhea is a common cause for the tubal block and infertility in women. Though the acute symptomatology is rare in women, women will have chronic symptomatology with pelvic inflammatory disease and more dreadful complication of infertility. And in women, the infection persists for a long time. They may act as carriers. And another complication is a mother transmits gonorrhea to her newborn during childbirth. During normal delivery, if the woman is infected with gonorrhea, the child gets infected with the gonorrhea, and more commonly the conjunctiva are infected, leading to what is called as ophthalmia neonatorum. Severe conjunctivitis will be there associated with corneal ulcerations. Severe conjunctivitis with corneal ulcerations. When the corneal ulcerations heal, they will lead to scar tissue called leucoma, and congenital type of blindness will be there. So this is very problematic in infants and children, where they cannot see, where the ocular mechanism do not develop, the child cannot see, so leading to a lot of problems. Then how to diagnose this gonorrheal infection? The traditional test is examination of the pus. You take the discharge or pus from the urethra and do the gram staining, and you look for the gonococci. Then you can send the discharge for culture and sensitivity to identify the sensitivity of the bacteria to which antibiotic this particular organism is sensitive. If you know that, you can give the appropriate antibiotic and try to eradicate the infection. Nowadays, the PCR based techniques are used. The NAT test, nucleic acid amplification test. PCR is one variety of nucleic acid amplification test. By this, even mild degree of inflammation also can be diagnosed. The complications which can be prevented by effective early treatment. In men, the complications are posterior urethritis. The infection spreads proximally into the posterior urethra, thereby leading to inflammation of the prostate gland called prostatitis, which can be acute or which can be chronic. When the infection settles in the prostate and seminal vesicles, this is for lifelong. Take it that the infection cannot be eradicated. That's why the importance of advocating aseptic catheterization. Whenever you are putting a catheter or any instrument in the urethra, into the bladder, you must be very careful about the sepsis. If you introduce the organisms which are normally present in anterior urethra into the posterior urethra, and if they get settled in the prostate gland and seminal vesicles, it can never be eradicated. So every time the patient passes urine, he will have some discomfort, deep pain in the pelvis, deep pain in the perineum and pelvis. He will be scolding you. Every time he passes urine, he scolds you. That is very difficult to eradicate prostatitis. Then from the prostate, it can go to the epididymoarthritis. Acute epididymoarthritis can result gonorrheal acute epididymoarthritis, which is non-suppurative. Pus do not form in the epididymis, but the epididymis will be very much enlarged. If the glands of litter are inflamed, infected, it leads to periurethral abscess. If the periurethral abscess bursts outside, it leads to urinary fistula. Because the inflammation extends through the whole thickness of the urethra in gonorrhea, it will lead to urethral stricture formation. Dense or thick strictures will form in the urethra. These are the dreadful complications, dangerous complications which occur in the urinary system. Other systems, gonococcal arthritis, iridocyclitis, septicemia, and endocarditis are also, though they are rare, they can occur. This arthritis and iridocyclitis, they may have some immunological basis, antigen antibody related, and in immunocompromised patients, that can lead to septicemia, and endocarditis also can lead. If there are valvular problems in the heart, so this bacteria will go and infect the damaged valves, leading to endocarditis. All dreadful complications. How to treat this gonorrhea infection? This is with antibiotics. You can use the ceftriaxone broad spectrum antibiotic. Nowadays, previously we used to give penicillin was the treatment of the gonorrhea. So this, after the identification and development of this penicillin, the treatment of gonorrhea and syphilis has become very easy. And another thing is, the people have learned that this gonorrhea is very sensitive to penicillin, and this has led to the rampant development of spread of these syphilis and gonorrhea infections. The adolescent or the adult who are debauchers, they will do the misdeeds and take one dose of penicillin. So though it is inadequate, they know that penicillin will cure the infection. So whenever they do these misdeeds, they will take the penicillin, one dose of penicillin. That's why this is the method how the infection has spread very rampantly and drug resistance has developed. So nowadays, the gonococci are not that sensitive to penicillin. So we have to go for other group of antibiotics like ciprofloxacin and ceftriaxone. One more important thing you must do is contact tracing. You must trace the partner and treat both the people at the same time. Otherwise, the woman will act as carrier and makes the repeated infections, recurrent infections possible. So you must always do the contact tracing and treat both the partners. Then coming to another nowadays more common type of urethritis, that is non-specific urethritis. Here the specificity deals with the gonococci, whether it is gonococcal infection or other infection. So all the other bacteria apart from the gonococci are included in this category. Any bacteria can cause inflammation of the urethra, which is included in non-specific gonococcal urethritis. The synonym for this condition is non-gonococcal urethritis. It is also a sexually transmitted infection. In 40% of the cases, the chlamydia trachomatis is the agent. So this is the most important thing, chlamydia, because it cannot be diagnosed that easily. It needs more elaborate investigations. So this is important. Whenever no other organism is identifiable by routine tests, we think that it is due to chlamydia and give the appropriate antibiotic for the chlamydia. Other bacteria which are identified are Ureaplasma ureolyticum, Mycoplasma genitalum, and in 50%, no cause is found. Though there are bacteria we know, but they cannot be identified for various reasons. Inadequate specimen, using of the antibiotics, difficulty in culture, anaerobic infections which are difficult to culture. By all these means, the bacteria cannot be identified in 50% of the cases. But still, it is a bacterial infection. Clinical features: in men, there will be dysuria and white mucopurulent urethral discharge is complained of, which is called as GLEAT. Early in the morning, when the man wakes up from the bed, his underclothes will be stained with this mucoid discharge, which is called as GLEAT. This is nothing but mucopurulent urethral discharge. This will be seen 6 weeks after the contact. The incubation period is 6 weeks. Urine appears to be clear and it may contain threads or pus cells. This is identified. This is an old test. Whenever we suspect urethritis, we ask the patient to pass into different receptacles, first and second glasses. So first half of the urine comes into the first glass, second part of the urine is passed into the second glass, and you do the gross inspection of this urine. If there are threads in the first glass, it indicates the source of these threads or fibrin plugs is the urethra. The second glass contains the threads. The source of these threads is the bladder. When the urine flushes, the urine passes through the urethra, it flushes all the threads or inflammatory conditions or inflammatory things that are there in the urethra into the first glass. So 2-glass test was used to diagnose the site of the infection, whether it is in the urethra or whether it is in the bladder. That was a old clinical test, simple test. You can see the threads or pus cells in the urine. Epididymitis is also common. Urethral stricture can result in the non-specific gonococcal urethritis also. Women usually asymptomatic or they may complain of vaginal discharge and urethrotrigonitis. Urethrotrigonitis. This trigonitis, when the trigone of the bladder, base of the bladder is inflamed, they will have more frequency of urination, along with some discomfort while passing urine. So, urethral inflammation leads to discomfort. Trigonitis will lead to increased frequency of urination. And it may result in cervicitis or pelvic inflammatory disease in women. The treatment is, the first thing you have to do is exclusion of the gonorrheal infection, which is important. And chlamydia can be diagnosed by PCR test on urethral swab or urine sample. You can do the PCR test, that is polymer chain reaction. So the available nucleic acid are copied and a polymer is formed, long nucleic acid chain is formed, which is identified. The treatment is with oxytetracycline or doxycycline. Broad spectrum antibiotics has to be used. And you can use single dose of azithromycin. When oxytetracycline is not available or the person cannot take this, you can give a single oral dose of azithromycin, 500 milligrams. Again, the principle is treat both partners to avoid reinfection. Contact tracing has to be done and both the people has to be treated at the same time. Then Ritter's disease. It is known as sexually acquired reactive arthritis. Reactive arthritis. Arthritis is inflammation of the joints. Which is reactive. That means the problem is not in the joint, it is somewhere. The joint is reacting to the infection that is present somewhere. Reactive arthritis. It can be venereal or it can be dysenteric in origin. So inflammation of the genitals and inflammation of the bowel, colon, causing dysentery can lead to the development of this reactive arthritis, which is called as Ritter's disease. It is an autoimmune disease. The tissues of the joint and other collagen containing structures are reacting to the antigen antibody complexes that are circulating in the blood. It has got a triad of urethritis or diarrhea. The initiating point is urethritis or diarrhea, urethral inflammation or bowel inflammation. Conjunctivitis will be there and polyarthritis will be there. The common triggering infections are chlamydial urethritis, gonococcal urethritis, or diarrhea of the Salmonella, Shigella, or Campylobacter. All these inflammations and infections can lead to development of Ritter's disease. It is a HLA-B27 associated condition seen people having this particular type of HLA antigen. Conjunctivitis is seen in 50% of the people, and arthritis occurs 1 to 3 weeks after the primary infection. Almost the primary disease, primary infection has subsided, then the person will complain of joint pains. If you go into the detailed history, they may come out with the symptomatology of the urethritis or dysentery. This is diagnosed on clinical grounds and treatment is symptomatic. If there is any residual infection, you treat that infection and avoid the stimulus and give some analgesics for the suppression of the arthritis. So this is one skin manifestation of the Ritter's disease known as keratoderma blerorrhagica of the heel. Now coming to the complications of the urethra, periurethral abscess. It can be in the penile part, it can be in the bulbar part, or it can be chronic periurethral abscess. It is due to infection of the glands of the litter and it presents as a tender induration on the underside of the penis. If the abscess discharges externally outside onto the skin, it leaves a fistula, urinary fistula will develop. So if you remember, number of glands will open into the urethra. So if these glands are infected, it can lead to periurethral abscess. So these are also glands, bulbourethral glands of Cowper. If these are infected, also can lead to periurethral abscess at bulbar site, bulbar urethra. Acute bulbar periurethral abscess. The acute variety have got bulbar as well as the penile parts. Acute bulbar periurethral abscess will present as spreading cellulitis of the perineum. Common organisms can be streptococci and anaerobic organisms. It is associated with a stricture. Proximal to the stricture, the glands that are present can be infected because of the stagnation and they will lead to an abscess formation. And these abscesses will burst outside, leading to extravasation of urine or urinary fistulas. Patient will have perineal pain with pyrexia, rigors and tachycardia. All signs of systemic signs of inflammation will be present. A tenderness and swelling will be present in the perineum, and you must treat the infection with antibiotics. If there are any collections of pus, they should be drained. And if the patient goes into urinary retention, you have to drain the bladder by suprapubic route. You cannot put a catheter in the urethra because there are sources of infection and inflammation are there. Catheter cannot be passed, or if it be passed, it will carry the infection to the deeper parts of the urethra. So it is better to drain the bladder suprapubically if the patient cannot pass urine. Chronic periurethral abscess results from long-standing urethral stricture. This is associated with urethral stricture, urinary stagnation, and periurethral abscess. This type of infection, where the multiple glands are affected, will lead to multiple loculi of pus. And if they burst open, it will lead to urinary fistulas with multiple external openings. Multiple gland affected, multiple abscesses or loculi of pus, and multiple external openings leading to watering can perineum. Cowper's gland or bulbourethral gland, which is synonymous with the Bartholin's gland of woman, can also be infected, leading to a perineal abscess. Now, one more interesting clinical condition is urethral fistula. This results from bursting or incision of periurethral abscess, which is a frequent cause. That's why when you suspect periurethral abscess, just if you pass a metal buoy into the urethra, you can burst open the urethra into the lumen of the urethra, which will avoid the fistula formation. And if you can pass urethroskop and give an incision in the abscess to drain it into the urethra. If this cannot be done, or if it is associated with the stricture, you have to open the abscess externally, leading to urinary fistula, which has to be treated later on. So bursting or incision of periurethral abscess is the common cause. It can also result from a abscess which has occurred behind a tight stricture with multiple openings and watering can perineum. The infection is proximal to the stricture. It can lead to multiple gland affections and multiple openings. It can follow an erythroplasty. The patient has been surgically treated for stricture of the urethra, and if the suture line will not heal properly, it can lead to urethral fistula. Either infection or stricture or postoperative erythroplasty can lead to development of the urethral fistula. If you drain the bladder, if there is no urine passing through the urethra and give some rest for urethra, small or minor types of fistula, they heal with fibrosis. They heal by themselves, the stricture is dilated and some rest is given to the urethra. Otherwise, again you have to go for a erythroplasty. You have to excise the fistula, associated fibrous tissue has to be excised, then erythroplasty has to be done. Then calculi. You can see calculi in the urethra also. They may be primary or secondary. Primary means the stone has developed within the urethra. Secondary means it has come from above, from other source. It has along with the urine, it has come into the urethra. Primary stones are seen behind a stricture where there is stagnation of urine or in an infected urethral diverticulum. If a urethral diverticulum has formed, the urine in this can get precipitated, leading to stone formation. Or secondary stone, which has migrated from the upper tract, either from the kidney or from the ureter, or from the bladder, and has lodged in the urethra. This migratory calculi coming from above can cause sudden pain in the urethra soon after an attack of ureteric colic. Patient had a loin to groin pain, and 1 or 2 days it has subsided, then followed by a severe pain in the perineum and urethra. That type of history says the stone has migrated from the upper tract into the urethra. And if you palpate the urethra, you can find a hard mass along the line of the urethra, which can be confirmed by doing urethroscopy. If you got the scope, just you pass the urethroScope, you can see a stone in the urethra which can be crushed and removed. Sometimes, interestingly, this stone will come and get stuck at the urinary meatus. Either in males or in females, the narrowest part of the urethra is the terminal meatus. So till that place they have drawn in the urine, and at the meatus they have struck. So you can see the stone with your naked eye externally. In such cases, just you simply a little dilatation of the meatus, you can remove the stone without causing any damage. Or if the stone is stuck in the urethra, depending upon the site, you have to adopt the procedure. If a stone is present in the prostatic part of the urethra, you displace back into the bladder. You pass the catheter, push it into the bladder, then from the bladder you can remove the stone by suprapubic cystotomy or by crushing the stone and extracting the stone. If the calculi is in the distal urethra, you can remove it by basketing under vision. You can pass the Darmia basket into the urethra, entangle the stone in this wire of the basket, and you can extract, you can pull it out. If the stone is at the meatus, you can deliver it through the meatus by dilatation or by doing simple meatotomy. External urethrotomy is rarely needed nowadays. External urethrotomy means through the skin, cutting the skin and the urethra and removing the stone, which will lead to fistula formation. That is not nowadays needed. You have got so many facilities, urethroscope, Darmia baskets, everything. You can make use of this sophisticated instrument and try to remove the stone without damaging urethra. You can crush the stone also into smaller pieces and remove this one. You can suck them out by using the Elix evacuator. Now neoplasms of the urethra are rarely seen. You can see polyps which are commonly seen in prostatic urethra where the lurking of the infection is more common. result from chronic infection. You can see externally, you can see the genital warts and the anterior urethra or in the trapezial sac. And angioma of the urethra is very rare cause of urethral bleeding. Carcinoma of the urethra is also rare. It presents as multifocal transitional cell cancers. So if you remember the epithelium of the urethra, proximally it is similar to the bladder, transitional cell epithelium. Distally it is similar to the skin, squamous type of epithelium. In the middle, it is transformed, it is via media, both the things will be there. So gradually, the urethral mucosa gets transformed from the transitional cell epithelium of the bladder to the squamous epithelium of the skin. So these tumors, they belong to the transitional cell cancers, multifocal, multiple point the tumor will be present. Commonly seen in prostatic urethra and distal urethra also. Sometimes they may be associated with bladder tumors and they are susceptible to local ablation by diathermy or laser. So you can cauterize them with diathermy or burn them with using the lasers, but they have a tendency to distend to spread. Pagetoid spread. You have heard the Paget's disease of the breast where the malignant cells will spread within the epithelium, intraductal, within the wall of the duct. Such type of spread is called as Pagetoid spread. This Pagetoid spread is also seen in urethral malignancies, ureter. The malignancy in the ureter, you can see this Pagetoid type of spread. Squamous carcinomas occur in the distal part of the urethra because of squamous metaplasia. And both these things present with bloody urethral discharge without infection. There is no evidence of infection, only bloody discharge will be present. When you investigate it, you can identify the tumors. And you can destroy these tumors using the laser or diathermy, but the prognosis is poor in these cases because of multifocal origin and Pagetoid spread into distant sites. You cannot eradicate the disease completely, so the prognosis will be poor. Now coming to certain disease of the female urethra. This is 2 to 3 centimeters long, 4 centimeters long, extends from the bladder neck to the extrauretral meatus. The diseases or problems that affect female urethra are the prolapse of the mucosa, stricture of the urethra, Fowler's syndrome, diverticulum, caruncle, papillomata acuminata, and carcinoma. The prolapse of the mucosa, also known as urethrocoel, is due to weakening of the local tissues, leads to prolapse of the urethra and anterior distal wall of the vagina. In the gynec postings, if you have seen a case of prolapse of the uterus, so close to the external meatus, along with a large bulge of the uterus, a small bulge will be seen close to the urethral meatus. That part is called as the urethrocoel. Then you can see a fair moderate sized swelling, that is cystocoel. Beyond that only you can see the uterus. So uterine swelling, cystocoel swelling, and erythrocoel swelling will be seen along if you see the complete prostodentia. This often occurs with cystocoels, occurs in later life old people and due to trauma of the childbirth. In multipara, you can see this prolapse. The stricture can occur in female urethra also following urethritis or trauma of a difficult labor. Obstructed labor is there. The urethra gets crushed between the head of the infant and the pubic bone. Later it gets inflamed, leading to stricture formation. You can dilate the stricture of the female urethra using the Hagar's dilators. One interesting thing is Fowler's syndrome. The patient complains of dysuria of long time and no cause can be found. This is due to abnormal myotonic discharge in the striated urethral sphincter, which can be detected by the electromyography. If you record the impulses in the perineal muscles surrounding the urethra, you can see they are unstable, they are continuously in spasm, and women will have difficulty to pass urine because the muscles are always closed, they do not relax. When the bladder contracts, the sphincter has to relax. Otherwise, there will be difficulty in passing urine and pelvic pain will be present. This can cause urinary retention in women without any stricture. So previously we used to do urethral dilatation for this urethral syndrome or Fowler syndrome that is found to be ineffective. And it can be treated by intermittent self-catheterization and sacral neuromodulation can be effective. If you stimulate this nerves, pelvic nerves and perineal nerves, they make the muscles relax and patient will have comfort. Diverticulum also can be seen in women. Usually it will be asymptomatic. It can be left alone.
It is in the mail.
There is the MRI of the pelvis showing the diverticulum. The pouch arising from the female urethra can be seen here.
Italy in the Manchini Bagler. Bagler about Manchilla. Italy never know what is
The last topic. This is also commonly seen in elderly women. Soft raspberry-like pedunculated granulomatous mass about the size of a pea attached to the posterior urethral wall is seen near the extreme meatus. So when you examine the patient complaining of dysuria, old woman, if you see the urethral meatus, a pea-sized reddish mass will be coming out of the urethral meatus, which is called as caruncle. This is nothing but the granulation tissue which is attached to the posterior urethral wall. So from the external urinary meatus, a small pea-sized mass will be protruding outside, which is attached at one point to the urethral meatus. So if there is prolapse of the urethral mucosa, pouting of the urethral mucosa, you can see a similar mass, but the mucosa will be more bluish in color and it will be attached at a broad front. Here caruncle will be more pinkish in color, attached only at one point because this is pedunculated. So you can simply cauterize the stalk or you can ligate the stalk and excise this mass. And papillomata acuminata, which are of viral origin, they can be seen on the external genitalia because they are due to chlamydial infection. They can be treated by excision or by applying podophyllin, a chemical type of cautery using podophyllin. And carcinoma of the urethra also can be seen in women more often than in men. You have to differentiate this carcinoma from the caruncle and carcinoma. And if you palpate the urethra, malignant swellings of the urethra feel harder than benign ones. If a caruncle is there, when you touch it, it bleeds, it will be soft to firm in consistency. If it is a malignancy, it will feel hard. They have to be treated by radiotherapy. And prognosis is poor. Even if you treat them, because of the pagetoid spread, because of the poorly differentiated carcinomas, and difficulty in getting the clearance, all these problems. So the overall prognosis is poor. So with this we stop this chapter. Thank you very much. Thank you one and all.